Tanse, I'm Advocacy. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Saskatchewan RCMP are investigating after a woman was found dead in Makwa Sahgaiehcan First Nation. On Friday, April 25th, RCMP officers from the Loon Lake Detachment responded to a call about a sudden death in Makwa Sahgaiehcan. When police arrived, they found a 34-year-old woman deceased at the scene. She is not being identified at this time. RCMP consider her death suspicious. RCMP Major Crimes and the Saskatchewan Coroner's Service are now investigating. Anyone with information about this woman's death is asked to contact RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Makwa Sahgaiehcan is located about 300 kilometers northwest of Saskatoon. The Toronto Police Service's Homicide Unit has taken over the investigation into the 2015 drowning deaths of two Mohawk fishermen. The bodies of Matthew Fairman and Tyler Miracle were found in the Bay of Quinte near Tyendinaga, Mohawk Territory on May 8th of 2015. Toronto police were called in late last month after a 2-year investigation by APTN Investigates disproved the initial police theory about how the fishermen's boat sank. The case, originally ruled an accident nearly a decade ago, is now with the cold case section of Toronto's Homicide and Missing Persons Unit. Anyone with information is asked to call Toronto Police at 416-808-7400 or email homicide@torontopolice.on.ca. A man who is a member of the Sandy Bay First Nation has died after he was stabbed over the weekend on Winnipeg's Waterfront Drive. Last Sunday at around 2 a.m., Winnipeg police were called to the waterfront between Higgins and George Avenues and located 43-year-old Carrie Eastman in critical condition. Police provided emergency care until EMS arrived. The man was rushed to hospital but later died of his injuries. No arrests have been made. Anyone with information on this death is asked to contact the Winnipeg Police Service or Crime Stoppers. This is now Winnipeg's 13th homicide of the year. 12 of the 13 victims have been identified by city police as members of First Nations in Manitoba or Saskatchewan. Alberta RCMP are asking for the public's help in finding the driver who was involved in a fatal hit and run last week. On Thursday, May 1st at around 11:30 p.m., Wetaskiwin RCMP were called to Highway 13, just west of Wetaskiwin, for a report of a pedestrian hit by a vehicle. A 50-year-old woman from Montana First Nation was later found and was pronounced deceased on scene, and the highway was closed for several hours. Alberta RCMP are asking for the public's help if they witnessed the hit and run that night. They're also asking for security footage or driver dash cam footage who may have recorded the woman walking on the highway. No arrests have been made. The investigation continues this week. May 5th is a day for communities across the country to honor and remember the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And nationally, the day has become known as Red Dress Day. APTN's Annette Francis reports.
We thank the Creator for everything that grows on the land.
Following a few prayers, youth from the Kitigan-Zibi School Drum opened the event on Parliament Hill. About 50 people came dressed in red, some carrying signs and some with pictures of their loved ones. The first one happened 20 years ago, and families are still here telling the nation the issue isn't going away. Bridget Tolley is the organizer of the event.
I feel like it's a deja vu from 20 years ago.
Tolley has been a strong advocate for families of missing or murdered Indigenous women and girls even before Red Dress Day got started. 23 years ago, her mother Gladys was killed by a Quebec provincial police cruiser while crossing the highway near her home on Kitigan-Zibi First Nation. That's what drives Bridget Tolley to keep organizing. For 20 years, she's been supported by Amnesty International.
I met Amnesty in 2004, a month after the Stolen Sisters report came out. In November of 2004. And 20 years later, They're still here beside me.
That Stolen Sisters report was one of the first to document the pattern of violence experienced by Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Ketty Nevi-Bandy is the Secretary General at Amnesty International. She says not enough has changed since then.
We need a very clear implementation plan that has the resources and the budget needed, working with families to build that plan and build those resources and execute them. That's what needs to be done. We need to walk through the execution and ensuring that what families are demanding actually happens. I think it's enough with the commitments, it's enough with the recognition, as you heard today, but they need concrete action.
A few blocks away at City Hall, about 300 people gathered for a separate Red Dress Day event hosted by the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition. Mary Doust is the executive director of the Minwashin Lodge, an Indigenous Women's Support Centre. She says progress on combating MMIWG continues to be slow.
The losses and the direct impact it's had on many of us only continues at a rapid rate that is it's inhumane to have to constantly face tragedy over and over again.
In spite of the lack of action from the many reports and national inquiry, many who took part in today's events say they'll continue to bring awareness and seek action. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Also on Parliament Hill, an Indigenous-led project to collect data on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls was among a number of Red Dress Day events in Ottawa. The data project is a collaboration between Poktutit Inuit Women of Canada, La Femme Michif Otipamisawak, the Ontario Native Women's Association, and Two Spirits in Motion Society. The groups hope that collecting vital statistics on MMIWG will pressure the federal government to fully implement all 231 calls to justice identified in the final report of the National Inquiry into MMIWG. Ontario Native Women's Association's CEO Cora Maguire-Surratt says this data will lead to positive policy change.
Indigenous women are not safe when they're accessing services and systems. When you're looking at the healthcare system, the justice system, the policing system, sometimes people like to think that it's one bad person who did one bad thing, when it's not. When you look at it, it was a systemic failure. And so everybody has a responsibility to correct that systemic issue. And so the data story is going to really showcase where there is policies that are actually implemented that are discriminating and perpetuating the violence that Indigenous women continue to face.
Now to the East Coast, where youth led Saskatchewan's Red Dress Walk to learn and promote awareness about MMIWG and 2S. APTN's Angel Moore reports.
In the Saskatchewan First Nation, over 100 students from Saskatchewan School, Ilnu, Seabrook, Gina, Mogogum School, LSK, led the MMIWG 2S Walk. First-time participant Talia LeBlanc is 10 years old, and she walked with her mother, Carissa Augustine.
Because it brings awareness of the missing and murdered Indigenous people.
About 200 people walked through the community, coordinated with the LSK School and the Saskatchewan chapter of the Nova Scotia Women's Association. Brooke Willis is the president, and she says awareness starts with the youth.
Yeah, aware of their surroundings and just to be more precautious when going out, because our people do go missing at a higher alarming rate. So I felt it was very important that we did have them participate today.
The day was about honoring MMIWG 2S and teaching future generations. According to Statistics Canada, between 2009 and 2021, the homicide rate is 6 times higher for Indigenous women and girls. Sherry Julian Brooks is a primary school teacher and helped arrange the event.
We wanted the kids to take part in this, to show that, you know, we worry about our family members that are missing, and it was a learning experience for all the kids.
The walk concluded at the community's cultural trail, where MMIWG and 2S people were remembered in ceremony.
This affects our communities at a greater impact than mainstream society. So to get the kids aware at a younger age just really helped, I hope, make an impact in their life.
This was the first Red Dress Walk for the students, and they are planning to walk every year. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Saskatchewan Mi'kmaq Nation, Nova Scotia.
When we return, we'll take you to another Red Dress Walk in Winnipeg. Stay with us. Welcome back. The people of Winnipeg also took to the streets for Red Dress Day on Monday. Here's TR Wheatley with those details.
Leading with the Strong Women's Song, families took to the streets of downtown Winnipeg. Joining them were over 300 people from the community. Grand Chief Kyra Wilson of the Assembly Manitoba Chiefs also marching in support.
You know, obviously we're dealing with a crisis right now, and so today is a reminder of how important this recognition and awareness is.
Also recognizing the fight of families to get 2 separate landfills searched in the city.
So of course, you know, with Prairie Green Landfill, we were successful in that search, and now we're moving towards a search at Rheaume Landfill, and we've had a lot of support from different levels of government.
Marchers gathered at the Forks to hear stories from families impacted by the ongoing MMIWG crisis.
As we honor the lives of our missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Rachel Lyons is the aunt of Cherise Houle, who was murdered in 2009. To date, no one has been charged in her death.
Somebody knows something about Cherise. A young girl just doesn't get missing off the street and then dumped in a creek outside of Winnipeg. You know, she looked like a little kid, like an 11-year-old, 10-year-old kid. She was 17 years old. She was just shy of her 18th birthday.
Many here also choosing to speak of birthdays and celebrations they missed with their loved ones because they were taken away too soon. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Also on Monday, the City of Saskatoon is looking to boost help in the community for Red Dress Day. The City of Saskatoon local groups have launched a program they're calling Training Active Bystanders, or the TAB program. TAB teaches participants how to spot a crisis, react, and respond effectively. This includes recognizing warning signs of racism and violence, preventing harm, and connecting victims to resources to escape danger. Co-chair Darlene Okomesim-Seacott says TAB helps people who want to help but don't know where to start.
I think part of it is learning to be, I'm not going to say hyper aware where you're anxious all the time, but always listen to that voice, that red flag, because that's not your imagination. That's something uncomfortable has happened or dangerous or unsafe, that to act on it, find some resource people, find a group like ours.
The color red flooded the streets of Yellowknife as more than 150 people took to the streets to show their support for National Red Dress Day on Monday. People gathered for the opening ceremony at the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly. Participants then marched through downtown Yellowknife to Northern United Place, a nonprofit organization where lunch was served. This year's event was marked by a speech from Melissa Hardesty, who is remembering the 10th anniversary of when her daughter Itanda Hardesty Beaverhoo was sexually assaulted and left for dead in Fort Liard. She was only 12 years old at the time.
She brought great joy to our family, and it's really hard talking about it. She was taken from us because, you know, we have boys that want our girls. You know, they want them, and, you know, they'll do anything to have them. So her victim was that person, was that man that wanted her so badly. Today is a special day. And today, when we walk, let's remember who we're protecting and what we're walking for.
We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, has your family been impacted by the MMIWG2S+ epidemic? Your answers are yes, no, And you can go to our website at aptnnews.ca/polls to cast your ballot. Last week, several First Nation leaders in Manitoba called for the return of cultural and sacred items in possession of the Hudson's Bay Company. The company helped bring Canada under British rule in 1670, but has since fallen into bankruptcy and has started selling all of their stores across the country. Now, records of their 355-year legacy will be kept safe from the sell-off because the Manitoba Provincial Archives will control them. APTN Sav Jonza looks closer into this story.
So it's like 1670 meets 1970. See how they did that?
It was the 335th anniversary of the Hudson's Bay Company on May 2nd. In recognition, the Archives of Manitoba showed off their sprawling collection of donated records from Canada's oldest corporation, a corporation that has since gone into financial peril.
We've been getting lots of questions ourselves, people concerned about the records here going up for auction. And so on that side, we really wanted to reassure people and communicate that these things are here and they're not going anywhere.
The Hudson's Bay Company, or HBC, filed for creditor protection in March and will close all of its stores across the country. While they liquidate and auction off their assets, keeper of the HBC Archives, Kathleen Epp, says this collection will remain safe under the possession of the Manitoba government.
The collection is incredibly valuable.
The HBC donated a hefty amount of materials to the Manitoba government in 1994 and more since. 2,200 linear meters of records, including 12,000 maps and 170,000 photographs. Epp says once the records were donated, the HBC gave up control of them and the stories they tell of their controversial role in colonization. Manitoba Archives visitor Kobe Konopalenko couldn't be more excited to dive into the history.
It's crazy to think about how it's from the 1600s till now, and everything's still here and still good to use. That's pretty cool. I find it pretty interesting. And I mean, I wish I could touch the books and read them, but I can't.
This vault is the smallest of their collections, with only a mere 4,000 items inside. There aren't any ceremonial items or artifacts among their massive holdings, but there are many other special things, like the original copy of the Peguis-Selkirk Treaty from 1817.
This is between Lord Selkirk and the 5 Indigenous leaders of the region, and they sign with their totems, those 5 animals there, and then their 2 names are provided around the totem. So we've got here Chief Peguis, and then also Letter of Noir with his Indigenous name above the fish. And so this is the first document in Western Canada that establishes and acknowledges Indigenous land rights and is only superseded by Treaty 1.
The collection can be viewed by anyone for years to come, weekdays at the Archives of Manitoba in Winnipeg. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thank you, Sav. We have more news after the break. Stay with us. Starting on the east, St. John's 10, Charlottetown 14. Cartwright 14, La Grande River 15. Saguenay 6, St. Jovite 14. 12 in Windsor, Sarnia 11. 19 in Wawa, Thunder Bay 18. 0 in God's Lake, Norway House 1. 14 in Winnipeg, Princess Harbor 8. Regina 11, Saskatoon 9. Uranium City -3, Buffalo Narrows 7. Rain in Grand Prairie at 17, Fort McMurray 23. Lethbridge 19, Medicine Hat 20. 22 in Penticton, Vancouver 19. 20 in Prince George, Prince Rupert 9. Dawson 13, Mayo 12. Yellowknife 8, Fort Simpson 16. Fort McPherson -1, Colville Lake -4. -3 in Baker Lake, Cambridge Bay -7. And Resolute -9, Arctic Bay -9 as well. Thanks for staying with us. Métis singer-songwriter Amanda Rheaume has been keeping busy this year. Shortly after being presented with a King Charles III Coronation Medal, she's now come out with a brand new album. APTN's Veronica Blackhawk has that story.
This
album is actually kind of a songbook for the Métis Nation, really.
Amanda Rheaume's new album is called The Truth We Carry. The Heartland Rock singer-songwriter is a member of the Ontario Métis Nation, or MNO. According to Rheaume, the album pays homage to Métis past, present, and future.
One of the main themes, and it really relates to the title even, The Truth We Hold, is that I think that a lot of Métis history has been untold, and I think it's also been misunderstood. And I think a lot of people know, Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont, but I think that the history is so rich and the culture is so rich, and my real hope is to be able to lift that up.
Her single called One of These Days is an example of that. The music video was filmed in Ottawa Bay, Ontario, and includes historical documentation provided by Mitch Case, a member of the MNO and friend of Rheaume. The song starts off with a quote from Métis elder Dolores Pinder, from which Rheaume pulled the inspiration for the lyrics.
My home, my life, my heart.
These Métis families' homes were burnt down in Ottawa Bay, and I remember at the time watching him make his presentation and tell this story and seeing the historical documents up on the screen and pictures, and just thinking how come no one ever know, I've never heard of this, and why does nobody know about this?
Alongside the release, Rheaume announced an upcoming tour, kicking off on April 30th with dates spanning Eastern Canada and ending in Japan. Rheaume is looking forward to sharing these stories on a worldwide platform.
So for a story that you couldn't even Google a couple of years ago, to have, just be able to spread this truth and this message and celebrate Métis people and what, our nation has experienced, specifically the folks that I'm referencing in these songs have given me such a great, just the permission and the ability to do so.
You can buy tickets to Rheaume's upcoming tour on her website. Veronica Blackhawk, APTN National News.
Thank you, Veronica. In the past few weeks, Trishelle Bunn has been the recipient of an Inspire Award and was elected chief of Birdtail Sioux Dakota Nation. Bunn is the first female chief of her nation and one of, if not the youngest chief in Canada. Tonight on APTN's Face to Face with Dennis Ward, she discusses her historic election and the challenges ahead. Here's a preview.
I think I was pretty much elected on a mandate of, transparency and accountability, and I think really bringing back those very foundational kind of things monthly community band meetings, establishing an elders council, and making sure that our community has a voice and they're being listened to and heard, and that they can trust me as their leader. So that was the most important thing to me, and also hopefully inspiring the next generation as well to be leaders and to step into leadership positions. So I think inspiring the youth and getting the young people engaged was really important to me throughout the campaign process as well.
Definitely make sure to catch that later today on APTN. And that's your daytime newscast for this Tuesday, May 6th. Dennis Ward is back with your evening newscast in a few hours. Please join us then. From our HQ in downtown Winnipeg, hi miigwech masicho kwana. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Exe.